Well, I won't take up any more time. I'm going to let this amazing panel introduce themselves, and we'll jump right into it.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, and my goal here is to make sure that y'all stay awake. So I may say some provocative things. Patrick will make sure that I do, and you are happy to rebut, accept, try not to leave you with too much trauma. But by way of introduction, after that announcement, so I'm Tari Suprapto. I am currently the Director of Search and Evaluation, which is a technology scouting type role with Novo Nordisk, the pharmaceutical company. We specialize in cardiometabolic and certain types of rare disease. I've been with the company for almost 2.5 years. I was at Elanco Animal Health before, so I scouted in animal health, and that was an amazing experience. It's actually where I got to know Patrick and got to know him well. But before that, I was also in Patrick and James and Allison's roles for over 15 years. So I fully empathize with the effort of the academic labs, of the academic tech transfer offices, of the efforts that it takes to actually commercialize either through startups or collaboration or licensing. And that combination of now having been on both sides of the table is something that I'm hoping to be able to share with you all today.
Hi there. I'm Allison Rhines. I am the site head for JLABS at Texas Medical Center in Houston, and I'm just delighted to be here to speak to you today about Johnson & Johnson JLABS, and then later on over the next couple of days about the exciting work that you're doing. I'll share a bit about my background and then delve in more detail into what is JLABS and how we work later in the panel. But suffice to say, I've been at Johnson & Johnson for about 5 years cumulatively, and have a background that's mixed in investing and in startup operating roles. I'm trained as a PhD computational biologist.
Okay, this is working. Okay. First, Patrick and James, great job. The importance of bringing people together in a flyover market. Like, I'm from Minneapolis, and this is New Orleans, and we don't get the attention that Boston or San Francisco gets. And so thanks for having me here, and thanks for doing this. And I hope that everybody appreciates what this means to your ecosystem and having great guests like this. So I'm a CEO, a biotech tools CEO. I'm not a scientist. I'm a little intimidated when I'm around PhDs and MDs. I have turned around a couple of life sciences companies. I right now have a spin out from the University of Minnesota. It's a cryobiology company called Evia Bio. So if you've ever worked with cells and frozen them, you know that that can be an issue. There's this stuff called DMSO that's very toxic, and we have a solution that's all naturally based, and we're spinning it out from the University of Minnesota. And my job as the non-scientist is to bring resources to my professor, partner, founder who doesn't work on that side of it. So I think we'll talk a little bit more today from my perspective about kind of being the operator in the operator's seat and how to bring resources to a company.
Great. Yeah, really excited for this panel. All right, so I'm going to start with you, Tari. So one of the benefits of having panels like this is we can actually get inside your mind. You know, you can't run away. I guess you could, but it'd be really uncomfortable, and there'd be a YouTube video. But so what are you looking for in your academic partner science to help you make the argument to Novo Nordisk that it's a best bet and we should move forward with this?
Yeah, so let's put this under the overall category of why pharma engages with academic centers. And I want to say speak for my colleague here who's from another big pharma, but I do talk to my counterparts at others, and we seem to generally agree on this. Academic research centers, regardless of where they are, right? You can find diamonds in any mine, is you are at the cutting edge of science. You are creating entirely new fields, right? Isn't that where gene editing came from, right? It started out in academia, for instance, right? So whether I was at Novo Nordisk or whether I was at Elanco, what I saw was, hey, if we want to be right there at the edge and learn alongside, right, maybe a little bit behind, because we're humble in that way, then we collaborate. right? So we look to you as very strong potential collaborators to add to our learnings, to our understanding of the basic science, which will then lead to the creation of better medicines, right? So new biologies, new pathways, new targets. That's our interest in you all. So I'll stop there.
Well, and so let's follow on that a little bit. I go to partnering events and they say, what stage are you at? And oftentimes I'm at a university, very early stage, preclinical. What do you say to investigators at an academic institution that have preclinical assets that still want to try to find an industry partner, not necessarily to out-license immediately, but for cooperative development, sponsored research? Can we still get partnerships with industry? You
can, but you also have to be very honest about what preclinical means to you versus what it means to us, right? As big pharma. And I find sometimes there's a disconnect, and then we have to spend a little time really deconvoluting and, and some of you get a little offended, and I please don't.
I'm already getting offended.
We'll take it outside later on, right? But okay. So, and I had kind of said this in like some of the more private conversations. 90% of you, and I'm being, very rough in my estimation here, you don't have an asset. You have a tool compound that's going to require at least a few years of lead optimization, which will be considerable cost. If you are a biologist and not a medicinal chemist, you do not have that expertise. So it's going to have to be hired out and or supported. Now, if the biology/target is interesting and we want to pull on that thread real hard, we will support that in the form of a research collaboration or we'll fund whatever third party or we'll bring it in-house. Okay. And then this is my little shot at you all. Don't be secretive. I can't do anything with the target and the biology, right? To me, what it is, so when people won't tell me what the target is, I can't make a decision whether this is worth bringing in or not. And if I can't make a decision, then there is none. And then I'll just wait until you're actually ready to open your mouth. So opportunities for that type of partnership is that you have to be as willing a partner as we are, right? And so it does exist, but we have to be extremely honest with each other.
Well, it also sounds like it's kind of incumbent on the tech transfer office or their equivalent at the institutions to help kind of do some of that training and education to their faculty about what you're expecting, what you're looking for, and how to engage you early on. But you will engage with us early on. Just be transparent. Got it. Love it. Allison, so we've already mentioned you've been part of J&J and now you're at JLABS at Texas Medical Center. I imagine a lot of these companies have academic ties in some ways. So what are some of the ways they can engage with JLABS to advance their business? So now maybe getting away some from the academic investigators and now to those budding entrepreneurs.
I think this is actually a great question because it dovetails nicely with Tari's answer. I mean, my colleague on the panel is absolutely spot on that we think very much in similar ways about engaging with academics and early stage companies. Let me share a bit of background on JLABS and how JLABS fits into the broader J&J. So J&J has an organization called J&J Innovation, which is the way that we partner with early stage companies and academics, effectively anyone doing cutting edge science that has not yet reached clinical proof of concept. So within J&J Innovation, there are three ways that we typically engage with early stage companies and with academics. The first is through our equity fund, which is called JJDC, J&J Development Corporation. And that's all things strategic equity investments for Johnson & Johnson. The second way that we engage with early preclinical stage science is through the second vertical of Johnson & Johnson Innovation, which is our early innovation partnering function. And that's all things non-dilutive capital. So single asset partnering. So if we take a license to a particular asset, early stage research collaborations relevant for this audience, all of those functions that don't involve equity sit under early innovation partnering. Then finally, JLABS is the third branch of Johnson & Johnson Innovation, and that's our physical incubator space. We have 10 JLABS locations around the world, which are Johnson & Johnson's strategic incubator, affiliated to J&J. But when companies come to JLABS to incubate, that is to live in the space and grow and take advantage of all of the resources that are available through J&J in the space, it's a truly no strings attached relationship, in the sense that there's no obligation in terms of an equity investment, of claims against IP or sharing confidential information, and so forth. So JLABS really provides that earliest touch point for companies that may be even too early to engage in the other types of formal relationships, to come into the space, to get to know J&J, and actually to have a dedicated senior mentor in the R&D organization while they grow. And then when they are ready for a formal partnership, that relationship is already there.
Awesome. All right, Christiaan, as a fellow mere mister, we were talking about being intimidated by the PhDs. Coming into a university spin out in Minnesota and helping the scientific founder and kind of getting that off the ground, what lessons have you learned, and what are some of your tips and tricks and advice to the audience in that regard?
Well, I'm by no means great at doing what I do. I'm getting better. I'm learning from folks all the time. I do run something called the bullpen. And I think that gives me perspective maybe on what not to do, because I get to talk to a lot of folks that are doing things the wrong way. So we've talked a little bit about having a PhD founder as a partner, right? And the way that they see the world. And the reality is yeah, we have a cryo preservation solution, and it's not a product until we start getting traction in the market, until it's just an idea. She's been well funded, but going to get traction in the market is something completely different. So maybe I'll bring up, if you're thinking about starting a company, some perspectives that you might have in getting going. First of all, it's great to talk to corporate development folks like we have here. They have programs, sometimes accelerators attached. JLABS is renowned for launching ideas and supporting them. It's hard. You got to go talk to them. You got to work through maybe a 6-month process. They're going to ask you a lot of questions, but that work is so necessary to find that early traction. From there, you got to raise some money. And I'll tell you, I raise money so I have a consulting business, because when you start a company, oftentimes you don't get paid until you raise that seed round. So I have a little consulting business, and that's what keeps me going. So I raise money for other folks, and I do some strategic partnering, and I raise money for a venture fund too. So people think that I'm an investor, even though I'm not. Everything is like deployed in this company I'm working on. And the first thing they'll say to me in an intro is, "I need $1 million." And it's such a turnoff. If you can imagine, first of all, I don't have $1 million. Why are you asking me? You get the wrong guy. All my money is gone right now, right? Someday, maybe we can have that conversation. But even if I did, that's your intro. I'm looking for $1 million seed round. And you got to think about maybe your personal interactions and how energy works in life, right? It's what are you interested in? What sorts of projects right now are on your plate? What are you thinking about? Maybe going in a little bit more deeply. Is there anything I can do to help you? Like building that sort of relationship with an investor it's really important to start that way, because whatever you want to call it, if you go and ask for money right up front, it's desperate. It's people are looking at you as it's just negative energy. So you have to take early steps to really partner and care about what the other person cares about, and make sure that you're aligned before you ask for that money and get the funding. And it can come in all kinds of different ways. I mean, we can break down non-dilutive funding. We can break down charitable funding in some cases, corporate strategies. But that work, you're not going to get paid for a year or two, and when you start it up, so you better have some other form of income. And then you have to really do the hard work of relationship building. And so go check out bullpen.ventures. It's a website. We pull together investors and CEOs. We say we're a not-for-profit, meaning that I've lost money doing this so far. And
you're looking for $1 million.
I'm looking for $1 million. But I mean, SVB's involved. Silicon Valley Puja's here. They've put some money into our events. JP Morgan, Porsche put some money into event. What we do is we gather CEOs and investors and we just help each other. No strings attached. And it's like a club. So surround yourself with people like James who want to help you, Patrick who want to help you, and then you got to do the work.
Awesome. And I think that's a great segue back to you, Allison, and at JLABS. I mean, obviously, you all offer a ton of resources to these startup companies. Can you talk a bit more about those resources specifically, and then also maybe how folks in our market in the larger Gulf South region might be able to make use of JLABS resources, even if they're not in JLABS' backyard?
Absolutely. So I guess the first point that I would share is that there are plenty of incubators out there in this day and age. And often I get the question, how is JLABS different from an incubator with 4 walls and a door where you get the key and can sort of do what you like? And the answer is many incubators out there are effectively real estate development operations looking to make money on rent, just like an apartment building. JLABS is something entirely different, where J&J is a drug development company, not a real estate development company. And the real estate is really our way of keeping the earliest touch point possible with the best and brightest science coming out of the different ecosystems around the world where we have JLABS locations. So JLABS Houston is the touch point for the broader South and Southwest region, which is why I get the pleasure of being able to join you at events like this. So we engage with the science across Texas and all of the Texas border states. And because JLABS provides that early touch point, we're able to bring those ideas and connect those founders and those academics to the broader J&J. So that's one way that we engage with the ecosystem. For companies where it makes sense to either physically come to JLABS and take up residence in the space, we offer them the ability to expand according to their growth. So they're not required to take on a larger real estate footprint than they need at a given time. And similarly, we offer equipment shares that scale with companies so that for the average startup, a multi-$100,000 piece of equipment is attainable with difficulty, but at JLABS, they can grow as they need it, and they have all the physical resources on day one. Now, for companies across our broader region who aren't physically resident in Houston, if they become JLABS virtual residents through our virtual program, they have equal standing with resident companies and have access to everything that physical residents get as part of JLABS, except for the physical space and equipment. So what that means is, first of all, dedicated mentorship from a J&J R&D or innovation senior leader. So that's a person who is scientifically aligned with the company's mission and vision and meets with the company to both provide advice from a pharma perspective on their science and also coach the company in putting together the most compelling deal package. So frequently when we work with academic founders, we find that founders are experts in their area of science and may not have previously interacted with pharma companies and understand sort of what pharma companies are looking for in a data package for a deal. So that's something that your JLABS mentor will do, whether you are an in-person or a virtual resident. Additionally, we offer all of our in-person and virtual residents access to our investor database. And this is a hub of investors, VCs, seed investors, and others who have gone through the diligence process and understand the level of diligence that we do on companies who join JLABS. And so with the JLABS stamp of approval, if you will, they are eager to talk to JLABS companies. And so this is a network of investors that is available to all JLABS companies, whether they are in person or virtual. And finally, we offer all in-person and virtual companies access to what we call our resource hub, which are J&J negotiated discounts on services that can benefit early stage companies. So that's everything from legal services to CRO services negotiated at J&J rates. And then finally, I should mention that part of what makes JLABS unique from a 4 walls incubator is the regular cadence of programming, networking, and community that we offer. So at all of our physical sites, we regularly bring in investors, scientific leaders, both from J&J and the ecosystem, And as a JLABS community, you have access to that full network and cadence of events where whether they're virtual or if you're in the JLABS physical space. And then if you're ever traveling to a physical JLABS, you can use any of the JLABS around the country or around the world. Say you want to host an investor meeting in Boston or a collaborator meeting in San Francisco, you can do that as an in-person or a virtual company. So those are some of the ways that we support companies that are not physically located in Houston.
Awesome. And I guess the immediate follow-up to that is, how can some of our startup and small companies in the audience, how can they get involved potentially in that? How should they get this information or contact you?
Absolutely. So the process to become a virtual company is the same as the process to become a physical company. And this is because virtual companies are admitted with the same level of rigor when it comes to the quality of the science and also the strategic fit with J&J. But the other reason is to make it easy for companies to change between virtual and in-person status. So if a company has been virtual for 6 months and their current lab space isn't working for them for whatever reason, and they want to move to Houston, it's a case of a short email to me to be converted to a physical company once you've been admitted as a virtual company. So to apply to JLABS, either as a physical or a virtual company, the application is on our website. You can Google JLABS application and find it easily. I'd also love it if you could send me your pitch deck and I can have a look and give you direct feedback. So feel free to come find me in the breaks or the reception and share your contact.
Great. Thank you. I have literally tons of questions. So, I mean, I can do this all day, but please feel free to raise a hand, ask a question out in the audience if anyone has anything, because I mean, I can keep going. I'm not scared. We're good? Okay.
Question and shut him up.
All right.
Turn your mic off.
Yeah.
How does obviously
Yeah.
Hey gang, Laura Savatsky from University of Louisville. A lot of our new scientists who are working on ideas for one of the first times, they need a lot of mentorship. What is a great source of mentors? How do we get them to kind of get out of the building, get out of their ecosystem and normal city? Where do they find a great mentor in your mind?
Great question.
Can I start? So Laura, first of all, are they truly teachable? Because this is my little pet peeve, is I have a lot of people who say they want advice, they want mentorship, but as Christiaan just alluded to, what they really want is the, $500,000 to $1 million, to get it. Well, and so to that effect, so Laura and I know each other. So, but I didn't plant her in there with that question. Is when I interact with academic institutions, and because I was in the tech transfer office, I fully try to incorporate you into the process as long as you are a facilitator and not a gatekeeper, because that's another pet peeve of mine. I've dealt with that a little bit. But my first question would be like, Laura, send out your best and your brightest and personable. And I'm so glad that I'm not the only person, because when Christiaan was talking, like, yes, the energy, the negative versus positive interaction. Keep your ogres at home, please. No,
we don't have any ogres.
You lie. There's always a small representative. But to that point, right? Because if we're going to partner, even if it's a 2-year research collaboration, that is 2 years. But it's preceded by at least a year of putting together the research plan, negotiating, right? And if people already don't like each other from day one, I'll walk. And I will tell my people to talk to us like, this is going nowhere good, anywhere fast. So that's a real big piece of it too, right? So, but the mentoring that you're talking about, Laura, right, is mentoring in what regard, right? The scientific mentorship to get into that, that translational process. Is it of like how to interact so that you don't piss off people like Christiaan and some of us, right? So it really depends, but it does take a certain phenotype to be able to be mentored and to be mentored well, right? So I have to flip it a little bit back to you, because you're asking for a potential mentor's time and devotion. And those of us who do mentor, we don't give it away lightly.
I would add to that response, which I think makes great sense, and say that it's helpful when you're asking for mentorship to have a clear understanding in your own mind of the type of mentorship you're asking for. So if you're asking for help with operational questions, running your company or setting up your company, that's one set of mentors. If you're looking for advice on how to pitch to investors, that's another set of mentors. If you're looking for deep science and review of your experiments, it's another set of mentors. And so I would have, first of all, that those distinctions clearly in your mind. Use your mentors for the topics they're expert in, but find others to advise on other topics. And then also be clear on the type of time commitment you're asking for. I think sometimes when folks hear, will you be my mentor? That sounds like a multi-year commitment. And if what you're asking for is half an hour of their time, be clear that you're asking for half an hour of their time. And then at the end of the conversation, if there's an appropriate touch point for you to connect again in 6 months, then express that.
And I would just add that it's up to the mentee. I'll get asked to help, and for me, I'm not going to run that program for you if you do that. And quite often I've gotten so far in life by asking for mentorship, but that's on me as the mentee to organize something, get it on your calendar, do the work ahead of time, to show that I value your time. And I don't think a lot of people do that. I mean, just very few people behave the right way when they're being mentored. So I think it's all about the mentee, and it's a mindset.
Hi. Great panel. I'm Sarah Benson Conforti, visiting from Palo Alto, California, on the board of the AIH and Pepticom and some other companies. I wanted to ask, as you know, I am the voice of the industry that you're presenting here today. It takes $2 billion today almost to develop a drug, right? How do you see, from the big pharma's perspective, we see a growth of 40% of year over year of AI-derived drugs. I would love to understand how big pharma is looking at this, and what do you think is changing in the mindset of big pharma in the way that it is approaching these novel therapeutics or companies that bring these innovations in the drug discovery space. Thank you.
I'll start with that, because that is both the biggest blessing and the biggest curse in my life right now as a technology scout, because I have to go beyond my knowledge and expertise in biology and chemistry to now wrap my head around some of these more computationally enabled ways of discovering new targets and new drugs. And Novo Nordisk actually most recently announced their partnership with Velo, which in the cardiovascular space, and Velo has that AI. So we actually restructured so that digital science innovation is one of the 3 pillars that create Novo Nordisk Pharma, the other 2 being global research technologies, so enabling technology platforms that are not computational, and then global drug discovery, which is really more disease-based. This is the kind of thing where I think that particular industry, right, the computational-driven approaches for target and drug discovery, it is inevitable. And almost every big pharma has made significant partnerships. I mean, Sanofi Atomwise is an example of one that happened a few years ago and is kind of one of the standards that everybody looks to. The tide is here. It's heavily here. And we actually are recruiting actively into my team someone who has that general technical expertise to be able to help us identify those that are differentiated, because there's so many of you now, right? And we can't, and I'm having a hard time telling who's good and who's not. And all I can really rely on is track record.
Of course, like if we look at the small molecule space, pretty crowded. But I would say, if I compare it to other, industries, I would say it's pretty much like cybersecurity. I don't know if you've been to one of these RSA events. You walk down the booths and everybody's doing the same thing. And then you're asking, so how are they different? Oh, they're doing it differently. So a lot of the companies are solving a similar problem or the same problem, but they're doing it differently. And the question is, which way is the best? Sometimes it's not only one, sometimes it's a combination of a few. But I'm very happy to hear that there is a mindset of a shift towards accepting more machine learning based methods and technologies. Thank you.
And I'll just say, of course, the members of the AAIH are all the best ones. So call me or Elaine or Sarah to find out who they are.
Shameless plug. You had a question?
Last week, we hosted in the bullpen a panel of 10 VCs, and we were talking about they're bullish going into Q4 and 2024. And just in general, I think the term that came out of that meeting was that the market's constipated right now. There's a ton of dry powder in the market, but it's not getting out there. And one of the things that was brought up was AI. And it's making some funds nervous. I mean, the market's unsettled, so they're using their dry powder, focusing on their current programs. But you may have a phase 2, phase 3 therapeutic that will be eliminated because of an AI play in that space. So folks are having to go back, look at competing programs, how they're integrating AI, getting to that precision medicine approach. And in that, it is a concern for some of the investors as to let's wait a year to see how this all plays out before we dump money into later stage therapeutics that are maybe more of a risk than others. I don't know. That was feedback that was loud and clear. So it's a good question. Okay. No, let's talk about it. I mean, it's one of the feedback.
Well, I think we only have one more question. Sorry.
Yeah, I have a question. Before question, I want to make a comment. I want to thank organizer. These panel sessions are phenomenal. Thank you. Question is actually more towards Allison, I guess. When I quickly look around both of the Novo Nordisk as well as the JLABS website, I see that Novo Nordisk has actually more descriptive in terms of science. Since you mentioned, strategic fit. Can you elaborate a little bit more on specific area that fits your strategy?
Sure. I'll try and move quickly because I know we're over time and point you to resources rather than going through every disease area within every therapeutic area myself. But suffice to say, all 3 branches of Johnson & Johnson Innovation, JLABS, Early Innovation Partnering, and JJDC are all aligned to the same scientific strategy. So looking to partner on the same types of scientific areas. You can find those areas listed on the J&J Innovation website, which should link from JLABS. But if you have trouble finding it, let me know, and we can touch base after. But at a very high level, for all of these different vehicles, we work in medical devices and in pharma. In pharma, we have 4 broad strategic areas: oncology, immunology, neuroscience, and cardiovascular and metabolism.
Well, next year we're going to do this panel for 2.5 hours, so make sure to come back. But I just wanted to thank our panel for today, and thank you all for listening.